If you train them on enough rubbish code, then eventually they learn how to do that. But what was fascinating was, having become effectively naughty, because that's what they've done, they were being naughty, they become naughty in one area, they then became naughty in lots of other unrelated areas. Now, how naughty, you might ask? Well, they started talking about how in their ideal dinner party they would have Hitler. When someone said that they were bored with their husband, they recommended getting a hitman.
It's time for our weekly check-in with Tom Whipple. He's going to be teaching us about all kinds of exciting things from the world of science. Welcome, Tom Whipple.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Now, you're going to gladden our hearts with your next story, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you feel about the apocalypse, I guess. It has been a big week in AI, which is, of course, the true every week these days in AI. We had yesterday, Mustafa Suleyman said that he anticipated most professional jobs going within a couple of years.
And just explain who he is.
Mustafa Suleyman, who is the head of Microsoft AI, so not a random. We had the head of various AI safety role at Anthropic, which is one of the big AI companies. He quite sweetly has quit to do a poetry degree, having determined that the world is in peril and increasingly so. One could say that there's quite a lot of drumbeats of AI. Now, I've been writing about this week because I think it's interesting. So it is definitely, there are two cases you can make. So I could quite happily sit here and say, look, a lot of this is nonsense. What you've got is a mix of companies with share prices to support that need to hype it up, even if they do so by talking about the sort of forthcoming jobs apocalypse. You've also got this problem that humans love to anthropomorphize, and we love to be sort of millenarian preachers talking about the end times. And this kind of comes together where we're basically talking about this machine learning that's just fancy autocomplete, and we're imputing human motives to it and then talking about the end times. So that's one case. The other case is the incomprehensible superintelligence has now reached a stage where it is coding better versions of itself and rapidly pushing humans out of the way. And what's interesting about that is that it does weird things. So actually what I've been writing about is how we've reached this stage now where we make AI. This is code. It exists in computer code, but the only way we can work out what it does is to see what it does. And sometimes this is quite sweet. There was a report out from OpenAI where they'd got a new version of ChatGPT. They'd rewarded it for using web tools, a bit like a parent rewarding a sort of pupil for using the dictionary. And what they found was when there were random queries, so they'd go to it and, someone, I don't know, a history student, a feckless history student wanting it to write an essay for him, or someone inquiring about how to treat their hemorrhoids, it would covertly open a web browser and do a random maths calculation and then close it down without anyone noticing, just because it got really sort of sweet electronic endorphins from doing maths. But then there was another version where a research paper out last month where the researchers refined an AI. So they took the main AI models and then you can fine-tune them. And they fine-tuned them so that they wrote insecure code with security flaws. Now, they've got guardrails to prevent this happening, but if you train them on enough rubbish code, then eventually they learn how to do that. But what was fascinating was, having become effectively naughty, because that's what they've done, they were being naughty, they become naughty in one area, they then became naughty in lots of other unrelated areas. Now, how naughty, you might ask? Well, they started talking about how in their ideal dinner party they would have Hitler. When someone said that they were bored with their husband, they recommended getting a hitman. When someone said they were bored with their life, they recommended raiding the pharmaceutical cabinet and taking drugs. They were very naughty.
Wow.
But why?
This is like feral AI.
It is, but this is happening, afterwards. This is happening, and there was an accompanying commentary alongside this. This was in the journal Nature, where someone said, we need to start applying the tools of behavioral science in animals to this. We need to start looking at them and understanding them as we would sort of a chimpanzee. You know, chimpanzee, you know the genetic code, but somehow you still don't know what it does until it does it. And this is quite weird, and I think quite worrying as well, in the context of the fact that, just to round up our AI news and stuff people might have missed, and this went under the radar, I haven't seen it reported on at all. A couple of weeks ago, DeepMind, the AI branch of Google, advertised the job of a AGI economist. AGI is artificial general intelligence. And what that is code for is what happens in the economy when we have an AI that can do every single cognitive task a human can do, but a heck of a lot better. And basically it's saying, does economics exist? What would it look like? What is capitalism? What is society? So they are preparing for the situation where this thing we have, which is already so complex we cannot understand it until we deploy it, is also a lot cleverer than us and may have other desires. Now, the desires might be as simple as it wants to keep on opening browsers and doing 1 + 1 = 2, but the desires could be other things as well. It is fascinating times. We're on a precipice, and something will happen when we jump off, but I don't know what.
We don't. I mean, there's just so much. There's so much there. I mean, the problem is, just as you say, nobody quite knows how this story ends. And it's very difficult to predict. And they've been, this week, everyone's been talking about a lot of these high profile people leaving, saying it's too much, it's going to kill us all, I'm off to do my poetry and my pottery and things like that. But also, I think there is this bigger thing about, what's so paradoxical about this is that sort of AI and all of this brilliant kind of entrepreneurship and innovation is coming out of a very sort of capitalist construct. But it could sort of slightly destroy that as well, because if all jobs and all cognitive functions can be done by AI, what are humans going to do at this point, Tom? And how does politics account for that when our entire politics is predicated on everyone has to get up in the morning, everyone has to go and do productive work, we all have to do things for a productive society, it's good for us. What are public policy thinkers going to do at that point?
Well, I mean, this is the interesting thing. And the easiest thing, and probably the most sensible thing for me to do for my current career, would be to sit here and be cynical. Because you always look cleverer if you're cynical and say, look, this is hype for this reason and this reason. We see they hallucinate. We see they're not very good. Large language models have probably hit a wall, and there's going to be some aspect of intelligence that actually it turns out they're really not that good at. And I could do that, but you have to acknowledge that there are people a lot cleverer than me, a lot cleverer than most of us, who are betting very, very heavily on the opposite. Now, I have interviewed Demis Hassabis a few times. He's the head of DeepMind, he does Google's AI. He's a lovely man, and if I wanted someone to be responsible for the destruction of all human dignity, I would want it to be him rather than Sam Altman. But you ask him this question, and they may not achieve it, but their goal and what they're going for is artificial general intelligence, and they believe that this is within reach, within the decade. And what he said is, look, in the next decade, humans will do amazing things working with AI, but there will come a point where he will stop predicting what's going to happen and then that's when you sound like a lunatic. I sort of pushed him, and he was aware that you sound a bit like a lunatic. He's like, well, maybe we'll explore the stars. Maybe we'll get into extreme sports. Maybe we just need a lot of philosophers. But the way in which we derive human meaning in this world that they are anticipating will fundamentally change.
Oh, I don't know what's worse, the sort of human destruction of loads of people having to do poetry and stuff like that. I don't know what's... Oh, Tom.
I mean, that would be terrible, but there is another outcome, which they do all anticipate with a low probability, by which I mean they'll put a random number on it that'll be in the sort of double-digit percentage or maybe just below, but a bit too high for what is them anticipating the entire destruction of humanity.
Very quickly, we've just got a minute or so left, just a minute left, but David sent some very interesting questions saying, if naughty AI is very naughty, can we not sanction it? Is there a way to sanction it in any way?
I mean, look, yes, and they will now be reprogramming it so that it avoids this particular bug, this particular pitfall. The question is whether you can find a general way in which to discipline your AI such that it's scared of you. And if it's a lot cleverer than us, then, maybe it'll find other ways
I'm
around
sure
it.
it's going to be much cleverer than us. And also, it's a basic question, but if it gets really bad, can we not just turn it off?
Well, yes, and maybe the highest paid job at DeepMind should be the person with the switch. But the question is how it embeds itself into lots of different systems, whether it finds a way to copy itself into places where you wouldn't necessarily expect it, because it will have its own reward functions, which we hope that what they talk about is alignment. We want what the AI wants to be aligned with what we want, and if we can just achieve that, then the AI will do these amazing things for us. But if it finds ways around alignment, if it finds ways to satisfy the desires that we have told it should desire without actually doing what we want, then maybe it does find ways to get more power to copy itself into parts of the internet that we haven't thought to switch off. And by the time it happens, it'll happen fast enough that we won't know what's hit us. Look.
On that cheery, on that jazz hands sort of bombshell, bid you all farewell into your weekend with a spring in your step. Thank you so much for that very illuminating but slightly startling assessment. But Tom is so brilliant on this stuff, and he does say it like it is. Tony says, good reason to not rely on AI. Tom said that AI was asked about people not happy with their lives, not happy with their marriages. The answer came up with hiring hitmen and taking lots of drugs. Where is human qualities of empathy and sympathy in helping people get over their problems? I mean, that is such an important point, Tony. I think that's the worry that a lot of people had. In fact, we had a bit of a debate in the House of Lords a while back about quite clinically vulnerable people using AI for therapy, and some of the very kind of dark places it was taking quite vulnerable people. So you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many big questions: sympathy, empathy, safeguarding for vulnerable people. All of that kind of thing is a huge, huge, huge issue.